Welcome to this Printess tutorial. My name is Axel, and today I would like to show how to build such a slideshow where even the buyer can interact to stop the sliding and skip through the different slides. But before we start, I would like to talk about the only challenge you may run into if you do animations. So first of all, if you would like to build an animation, you have to go to the gear icon here on top to choose the option Show Animation Timeline. Or instead, you can just press the T key on your keyboard. And now we've got one frame selected. And even though we cannot assign a timeline, because Printess says that only single frames could be animated. So what to do? This is a graphic, vector-based, which I paste in from Illustrator. And because of all the different passes included, Printess cannot indicate it as a single frame. And this is why I press the right mouse button first to go for the option Group as a subdocument group. And as soon as I have converted it, I can add a timeline for that frame. Printess is asking for a name for that particular timeline. We will call it Cloud. Done. The same counts if you would like to move more than just one frame at once. Also then, so let's say we have a heart which should move, and at the same time the circle. So if I want them to move together, I select them both, right mouse click, group as subdocument. And again, this is really the only challenge you can run into if you do animations. The rest is relatively easy. If we come back to our animation we would like to do, I have prepared all the components I need because the content is even editable by the buyer. And this is why I picked it up from an existing template, which you can find, by the way, in the new section. So if we open another Printess Editor again, you will find that example here in the new section called Animated Minuet. So this is exactly where I picked my components from. I also copied the form fields which I need and the styles because it's a totally different story. This is explained in other tutorials. We will really focus on the animation itself today, but here you can have a look into detail how such a document is built and how the animation works. So let's go back again to what I've prepared. So I took these components, I took the form fields and the styles to make that all work in general so that we can now focus on animation only. So in the first step, I will now duplicate slide number 1 to call it slide number 2, and again duplicate that one to name it slide number 3. Now I will change the content here so that they do not all look the same. Yeah, I will go for a pasta here, and number 3 will get the green bottle and the salad, for example. And after this is all done, we can now focus on the animation. So I've got a separate document here called animation, and I've prepared that background image which we need. So I drag and drop it to scale it to the document size. And now I grab slide number 1 document here to place it as a subdocument. And in that moment, as I have shown earlier with the cloud example, all these different frames are be treated as a single frame because the slide number 1 is now a subdocument on that animation document. I will scale it up to do the same with the 2 others. And now we have 4 layers here, one with the background, which I will put on a separate layer to lock it, which is not a must to do so, but for you it's then easier to see and understand what I'm doing here. And I've got these 3 slides. So I select one of those. I press the T key again to assign the frame of slide number 1 to an animation timeline. I will call that timeline slide 1. Here we go. And if I now change the order, just to be accurate here, and turning off the 2 others, I can already give it a try. I press P for play, and it slides in, shaken to slide out. Because we have 3 actions here defined on the timeline. Here on the right hand side in that window, I could expand the animation up to 20 seconds, but I think for now 5 are fine with this. And here for the slide 1, I've got the slide in action, I've got the shaken, and I've got the slide out. And this is wrong direction, because then it won't be a slideshow if it bounces back. So this selected slide here I will change. I click on left to make it a slide right. So let's do the same for slide 2 and 3. I turn on these layers again to select slide 2. Okay, and slide 3. And also for those two, we will change the sliding direction here of the second one to the right. Okay, and now all 3 of them would do exactly the same, which is not really a slideshow now. So first of all, we don't need the shaking action. I selected to press the backspace to remove it. Same for the other 2. And now we need an offset of these slides. So the first one should start at the very beginning, which is fine with us. And it should go ahead with sliding maybe here. So the second one should then start here to slide out here, and last one would be here. Okay, if we now press P for play, we have a slideshow done. But there is no overlay, that's number 1. This is why we have an empty background in between the slides. And we don't need these fade in and fade out options here, which is increasing the opacity of the frame. We would like to have the full opacity straight away. And as I said, we need an overlay here of the slide out and the slide in of the next one. Same here. Turn off the fading feature for all of them and give it a try. Of course, I can also start the animation here. But to make the content of the 3 slides editable, we have to set them all to editable, or in this case, better option, we will define each single document as a document step, because then the buyer can't skip one of those. He has to really go through it step by step, and it will always end with the animation. So if we now go to the buyer side to give it a try, we don't see any form fields displayed here, and this is because of our buyer view appearance settings. You can press the gear icon again to go for buyer view appearance settings, or you can press the A key. I prefer the shortcut. And it is set to creative photo product, which is fine with us. But we have then to activate the option show form field tab. And as soon as I do so, if you take a look to the right here, you see that it gets activated. And if I save again to go now to the buyer side, all our form fields are available here. So let's put it to green, change the meal. Next one, select a cheeseburger. Third one we will leave as it is. Next step is now our slideshow. Here we go. In the next step, we will now add a flasher. So I need a shape to move it to the button. Change the corner radius, and of course the color to a beautiful Printess pink. And we will add the text into that frame. We make it white and we change the font. And we need some padding around. I press the T key again to add another timeline for the flasher, and it should slide in. It should shake to get more attention, but then it should stay, so I will deactivate the slide out option. And in the last step, we need these arrows to enable the buyer to skip back and forward. Therefore, I will add a separate layer to put it on top of the base layer, to now add that shape here. Let's change the color to white to reduce opacity, copy and paste it to rotate it, and placing it on the opposite. This one needs to go down a bit, okay. And now we have to add an action to these two. So I go to the buyer side settings of that arrow to activate the option use that frame as a button. And now we have the option here to define an animation action for it. This should skip to the previous. This one should skip to the next. And that's really it about the buyer's navigation. So let's go back to our timeline. Okay, two small details. Number one is I will change that timeline here to be not part of the chain. So these signs here are showing us that all three timelines are part of a chain, which is important for a slideshow, but not the flasher. It should be handled totally separately. It shouldn't be influenced by the errors, by the skip done by the buyer. And these are the two things why it shouldn't be part of the chain. And I will also lock the arrows here, because then I can already test it here at the designer site. So I even don't have to go to the buyer site to give it a try. But even though we will do now, again, we won't change the content. That's approved. Here we've got the slideshow. And if now the buyer is pressing one of these arrows, the slideshow stops and the buyer can skip back and forward manually. Last not least, you need to know that you can also export these animations, which doesn't make sense for a slideshow. But if you do an animation to be used somewhere else on the web as a banner, for example, something, you have to set your animation document to production first. And now, like you may know it from regular Printess documents, you can ask for the rendering of an output file to choose MP4 or GIF for that animation to get it rendered here. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.